So, our political reporter, Josh Nevitt, joins us now to talk us through some of the key decisions. He's also going to be hearing from local businesses today. Hiya, Josh. So, give us a rundown of some of the key points that we're looking out for, will you?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Vic. Well, first of all, I mean, today's budget will be Labour's first in almost 15 years, and that's a huge moment. Rachel Reeves will also be the first female chancellor ever to give a budget. So I think some of the key things have already been announced already, but one of the big revenue raisers for Rachel Reeves will be national insurance paid by employers. Now, employers currently pay national insurance of 13.8% on workers' earnings above £175 a week, so even a small rise could raise billions for the Treasury. But I think businesses say that increasing the rate will effectively be a tax on jobs and pay, because they say the decision means less money to hire and pay staff. And then there's also inheritance tax. We know that the government is planning to increase the amount of money it raises in inheritance tax of the budget. Inheritance tax is charged at 40% on property possessions and money of someone who's died over a certain threshold. And that tax includes a series of exemptions which over the years, several governments have considered changing, but have not done so. So that's all in the mix. And then we come to the matter of how the Chancellor actually spends the money she raises. So she's already announced billions more for the NHS and schools. And she also wants to change how debt is measured to allow her to borrow more to invest in things like energy and transport projects. So we have a fairly good idea of what's in the budget, but what definitely won't be in the budget is a rise in income tax, VAT or national insurance paid by employees. Labour promised not to increase taxes on what they call working people in its manifesto, but I think you may have noticed that there's a huge row about how you actually define a working person.
OK, so what does that mean? What's the row about then?
Well, I think Labour has been struggling to define what it means by working people. I mean, it's a pretty slippery term. Last week, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, went into more detail, defining it as someone who goes out and earns their living, usually paid in some sort of check. So, he said someone who earns additional income from assets, such as shares or property, wouldn't come within his definition. But I think some might argue that, business owners who pay employee national insurance are working people and should be exempt from tax rises. And perhaps also landlords who derive some of their income through rents may also see themselves as working people. But Labour appears to have a much narrower conception of working people as essentially people on low or average incomes who receive pay slips. And I think to circle back to the manifesto, this definition is intimately linked to those three big taxes that Labour promised it wouldn't rise in this budget.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens then. Now, you're going to be joining us a little bit later on to find out what businesses think. But in the meantime, you've been out and about on the streets of Cov to see what people think there.
More funding for schools and the NHS.
Too blooming right. That's what keeps the country healthy and able to perpetuate the NHS. If you don't educate people, we're not going to have an NHS.
Right, so we've got another person taking a dip into our bag. Do you want to have a go?
No rise in income tax, NICs and VAT.
So that's a Labour manifesto pledge, no rise in those three taxes on working people, as they call it. What do you think about that?
But they didn't stick to it, did they? I know they're adding the VAT on private schools, and then I think with the tax increases that are going to be happening for working people, I think they haven't really been honest with the way that they've presented the manifesto to the public.
What have you got there?
Tax rises to fund public services. Inevitable, really. Don't know how else they'll get the money.
I'm just going to ask you to dip your hand in the bag and see what you get out.
A 7p increase in fuel duty.
Fuel duty is what's charged at the petrol pump when you fill up your car. If that was increased, how do you think that would go down?
No, I don't think that's a good idea at all. Petrol's already expensive as it is now, or fuel. I'll be annoyed at that, me personally, and I'm sure millions of others would as well.
Do you drive yourself?
I do, but as I recommend to all, get a motorbike. They're a lot cheaper to run, so it won't be too bad for me. But for drivers, definitely. It's already like 60, 70 quid to fill up my car.
And you'd be happy to see taxes go up so we can fund the NHS and schools?
Yeah, I worked after I retired in a part-time job and paid tax on that, and quite happy to do that.
So here's the bag of goodies for lucky prize winners.
A rise in tax on alcohol and tobacco. Oh, that's bad news for people, isn't it? They're having a hard time at the moment, aren't they?
So you wouldn't agree with any rise on alcohol and tobacco tax?
Oh no, because I'm a smoker myself, and I think, well, I probably pay more tax than anybody else, you know, and they don't even provide us with ashtrays.
They don't give you ashtrays, I suppose. No, they do give you an NHS, but that's what Rachel Reeves is hoping will be improved upon after today's measures. Thank you very much indeed to Josh.